Across the street in particular, their engine was parked in front of the house for several days with the window blown out in the front, and many people were writing messages of love on there, and they have a picture of Father Michael and the various other men from their house that were lost, and people have been stopping by as many places with flowers and saying a prayer, and it's just a very touching kind of scene.
I suspect the firefighters would say he was as much a part of what they do as they are, that he was a part of their family, and they're trying to show that. Thanks for coming in.
Okay.
You're very patient,
Thank you.
waiting
No
to a number of different things.
Okay.
It's nice to meet you, sir. Thank you very much. The business at hand in many parts of the country is trying to get back to normal. Normal is a difficult thing these days, and air travel is one example of why it is so difficult at very busy Hartsfield Airport in Atlanta. Hartsfield International, CNN's Bonnie Anderson joins us now to update us on that. Bonnie.
Well, if you were to judge just by the terminal, by the numbers of people inside, by the traffic outside, by the comings and goings, it would appear that Hartsfield International Airport is back to business as usual, but it's not yet. While we're still hearing planes overhead, they're only back to a partial schedule. That means there are many more delays, many more people having to wait. But on a day like this, for many of these people, it's also then time to remember.
The plane area is under close video surveillance.
Thousands of passengers going through the now tedious motions of air travel today.
Right over here. Okay.
But beneath the surface, sorrow.
It's a devastating thing to watch on TV. All you could think about are the families, what they're going through. It absolutely breaks my heart.
For Ruth and John Coleman, hoping to get home to North Dakota today, certain images say it all.
For the people who helped out, like the firemen and the policemen, who gave their lives, to serve others. I guess that's what really touches my heart a lot.
Just seeing the picture of the policewoman with the 2-year-old at home. It's terrible.
As he waited for a plane to take him home to Utah, Ted Lloyd read his Bible and sent a heartfelt message to those in pain.
Our hearts are with you, and as hard as it is, I know that all of us would love to just put our arms around you and cry with you and support you and know that your Heavenly Father is there.
Chaplain Carol Meredith, who is part of a terrorism response team, sends prayer.
I pray for God's strength for everybody that's involved. Comfort for those who are trapped. Strength for those that are really hurt, the ones that are trapped and are injured severely. Hope for the rescue workers.
At noon today, there was also a moment of silence. All activity stopped inside the terminal. People bowed their head in prayer. And now, with heavy hearts, many of them are continuing on their way home. Aaron?
Bonnie, thank you. Bonnie Anderson in Atlanta. We told you the weather's pretty rocky here in New York. That's affecting the movement of a Navy hospital ship that's coming up, I believe this is correct, from Baltimore. Picking my memory here anyway. It's having trouble getting into New York Harbor. Down at the Pentagon, Craig During, an Assistant Secretary of Defense, is beginning a briefing on the reserves and the mobilization thereof.
And then they fill it by going out and actually identifying the units or the individuals that they think are best suited to fill those needs. Now, if it's for a mission involving support to civil authorities, the lead federal agency will define the requirement to DOD through the Executive Secretariat and the Director of Military Support. And I think you had a briefing yesterday from Brigadier General Vaughn about that process. So we have to go through that process yet to determine what it is that we need in both cases. The services themselves will identify the units that would be recalled. Now, as for the Air Force, I'd probably have to defer to them to find out why their numbers might be larger than the others. It might have something to do with the air superiority mission, but it would strictly be a guess on my part.
But we've already been told by senior defense officials, in fact by Tory Clark, that the initial ones he expected to be within days. Is that not true?
It's entirely possible. It depends on how long it will take for them to send their requests in. And obviously some thought has gone into this before now, so I'm sure that some are more prepared than others. Yes, sir.
So is this largely the Homeland Defense missions with the civil support being a smaller portion of this? And what are the Homeland Defense missions specifically?
Well, the civil support, of course, would be, let me start with that first, would be the type of missions that you would see working with communities, working, trying, the cleanup, the MP type actions, the chaplains, the mortuary affairs, whereas the Homeland Defense missions would be the more military, the traditional military-oriented activities. And again, we'll just have to wait and see what the services ask for. I imagine they're putting their concept of operations together now.
In other words, you don't know which is the larger portion.
I do not know which is larger, quite frankly. I just haven't looked at that.
And when you say more military type, do you mean
the traditional, from the definition of Homeland Defense.
I mean fighter pilots, things like that.
Certainly, most of the air superiority mission, if not all the air superiority mission now, is in the Air National Guard, for example.
Has the secretary signed the order for the 26 air bases to enhance air superiority mission at the 26 air bases?
I honestly don't know.
Did the president authorize that, or does he need to do it? Can the secretary do that without authorizing?
I honestly don't know the answer to that, and we might be getting into operational issues here, and I'm just going to steer clear of that today.
You're still sorting out the missions that need to be performed. How did you arrive at the 35,000 figure?
These are the estimates that the services gave us, based on their best planning at this point, and we think it's a pretty accurate number for the need now.
That, or would that be the figure?
Well, of course, under the authorization, they can go significantly over that. But right now, the guidance is that if we were to exceed it by if we were to exceed the cap of 50,000, the Secretary of Defense will coordinate with the President, with the White House, before we actually exceed that limit. So the point I'm making here is that the White House and the Department of Defense are working very closely together on this. This is a well thought out plan, and they're working in concert with each other, and certainly have a handle on what is happening. Yes, sir.
Do you have an estimated breakout by service?
Pentagon spokesman Craig During talking about the mobilization of reserve units in a very broad, general way, talking about what those reservists, whether they be Air Force, Army, Marines, Navy, about 2,000 Coast Guards men and women, and part of that. The best guess now, though the President has authorized up to 50,000 reservists to be called up, it'll be somewhat lower than that, perhaps 35,000 at least initially. And you heard him talking about MPs at one point. A lot of that has to do with just helping provide support here in New York and Washington to crews that are tired, weary, and need some help. One of the things that the Secretary of State is demanding of countries is that they stop allowing money transfers from their country to suspected terrorists who might be living in other countries. That's one of the elements of that side of the story. Our David Ensor, national security correspondent, joins us now with more on how some of these items are playing into the investigation. David.
Well, Aaron, before I get to the money, I would like to just mention one aspect of the law enforcement and intelligence side of the investigation that's going on now. U.S. officials tell me that there are still would-be terrorists inside the United States who they believe have the hope of attacking additional targets. They would not offer any details, but they say that there is no reason to believe that all the perpetrators are dead or in jail. So there is a serious amount of concern about that, obviously, and that explains some of the additional security measures that we've seen taken in the last 24 hours or so. Now, in answer to your question, there's a tremendous amount of work being done at the State Department and other parts of the U.S. government trying to build a coalition for this war that they expect to have to be involved in, calls to scores of nations The message to Muslim nations and moderate Arabs, Pakistan also, is that you must choose sides now. Specifically, they are saying that you must stop the flow of money to bin Laden's coffers. For years, there's been a blind eye turned by many governments to payments sent by wealthy Muslims to charities and other fronts for Osama bin Laden and organizations like his. U.S. officials are saying there could be no more hedging of bets, and they're saying the U.S. will be watching closely to see whether that money flow is actively stopped or not. They are watching now to see whether President Musharraf of Pakistan, who is meeting with advisors today, will be ready after that meeting to say he's going to fully cooperate with the U.S. The U.S. is asking, would he allow overflights in the event they became necessary? Would he allow troops if that was necessary? Will he control his border? Will he stop aid to the Taliban? There's a recognition, officials say, that if he says yes to all of those questions, there is a risk of some unrest in Pakistan. There is a downside for him. Officials are hoping, but they are not sure, that President Musharraf will come down on the U.S. side. The priorities now then are to help New York to solve the crime, build the coalition. On retaliation, that whole subject is not getting too much of the president's attention, I'm told by senior officials, or his cabinet at this point, lower level people. The Pentagon obviously has to make its plans. Public rhetoric makes it clear that retaliation is going to be foreseen, and they're not ruling anything in or out at this point, Aaron.
I want to go back to the beginning, but let me ask you one question about the end, which is, just in the normal course of business, I assume that military people would put together a plan, an option, or perhaps several options, and then present it to the president. Doesn't need to take his time now.
That's right. The senior people are dealing with those issues I mentioned before, the issues of New York, of the nation, of security here, of solving this crime and preventing any future ones. There are preparations being made for them to be able to consider the what next, the retaliation questions further down the road.
All right, let's go back to the beginning, this troubling piece of information you're hearing. No reason to believe that all the terrorists have been found. And I'm prepared to hear you say this is all they're saying and they won't give us any more, but let me ask it anyway. That's a little different than saying there's no reason that there may still be terrorist plan out there.
I know it is, and that was exactly what I asked. And the answer is you can say it in the positive as well. In other words, there is evidence that there are terrorists in the United States planning additional attacks. So obviously that's a big concern. Aaron.
Let's see if we let's build a couple of bridges here. Let's go to Atlanta. Mike Boettcher, who's been covering the investigation in the United States as well. Mike, hearing what David has said and hearing what your sources are telling you, are there any dots you can connect here?
Well, the dots I can connect to the fact that there has been movement of some organizations to the United States over the past few years, evidenced by indictments in North Carolina earlier this year of according to federal prosecutors, members of Hezbollah, who they say were raising money in the United States. And over the course of the past few years, as I've covered terrorism, they've always brought up the specter of sleeper cells. Now, these are people who come into the country, lead normal lives for a period of years, and then are activated for particular missions. And certainly, if you look at the case of people involved in this certain act, I think we're going to find some people who led normal lives here and then all of a sudden were activated. So those are the dots I can throw out there for you right now, Aaron.
The Attorney General, I believe I heard this correctly. Guys, hang around because I'd like to pick up on this. The Attorney General, John Ashcroft, is talking now about the investigation, and we'll pick that up here.
I want to take this time to give you a report in regard to these matters. Today, the Federal Bureau of Investigation released a list of 19 individuals who have been identified as hijackers aboard the 4 airliners that crashed on Tuesday. The FBI requests that anyone who may have information about these individuals, even though these individuals are presumed to be dead, anyone with information about these individuals immediately contact an FBI field office or call the toll-free hotline. The toll-free hotline, as you know, is 1-866-483-5137. 1-866-483-5137.